Hey girls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's video is going to be the start of my summerween vlog. I love this readathon. I participate in both summerween and then also the other weens throughout the year. It's just always such a good time. I love horror fiction, love speculative fiction, so I love getting a excuse, not that I need one, to read it all year long. I've got a really ambitious but really exciting TBR. The readathon did officially start yesterday and I did start a book yesterday, but I didn't get a chance to sit down and start the introduction of this vlog yesterday, so today's day 2 of the summerween readathon. My TBR is very large, very ambitious, and with the exception of a couple of them, most of these books actually have come out this month. So I'm very excited to get to read them right when they first come out. This July has been such a good month for horror releases, so I'm very excited. I do have lots of books on my TBR. It is kind of chaotic because instead of matching a specific book to each prompt, I kind of just picked a bunch of horror that I really wanted to read this week and just kind of hope for the best. So far, there's only one prompt that I can't fulfill in the stack that I have. I do have several books with the word haunt in the title on hold from the library, and just none of them have come in yet. So that one is definitely up in the air whether or not I'll complete that challenge, but with the other prompts, I think I can fulfill them all with these books. So I'm just gonna go ahead and quickly talk about some of the books that I plan to read throughout this week and this readathon. We'll start with the 2 backlist, even though one came out last year, so it's not really backlist, but it didn't come out this month like the majority of my TBR for this readathon. But the first book and the only nonfiction that I have is The Apparitionists, and this is a nonfiction book about spirit photography. I just find spiritualism and that time period in American history really fascinating. So it's a tale of phantoms, fraud, photography, and the man who captured Lincoln's ghost. I am both a lover of history and spooky things, so this just felt like a really good, really interesting nonfiction to pick up. I was really hoping that one of these words would be haunt, but honestly, if we stretch the prompt a little bit, it does have several sections and it does say haunt in several of those headers, so maybe. It primarily focuses on a spirit photographer named William R.LUM.R who took a bunch of portrait photographs that showed loved ones, deceased loved ones, with the people still on Earth, and he went to trial for that, for fraud, I believe. I can't think of another charge that he would have gotten for just taking photos, but obviously it was a different time, so we'll see what he ends up being charged for. But it does follow his trial, kind of his career and his life, and then I think also a little bit of just spirit photography in general, which I feel like is just such a fascinating concept. And honestly, I know it's very morbid of me, but I think it would be so cool to find in a thrift shop one of these spirit photographs. I just think it's such a cool concept. I'm really intrigued in reading this just because I am really interested in the time era, in spiritualism, in ghostly spiritual kind of happenings at the time. After the Civil War in the United States, it was not a fringe movement. Spiritualism was very, very big. It was a huge belief system that a lot of people prescribed to. Again, it was very mainstream, as well as photography was still a very new art form at the time. So I'm very interested to dive into this one. I've been having a lot of good luck with nonfiction this year, and I just think this will be the perfect nonfiction read. And of course, because I don't think you could write a book about this without including lots of pictures, there's lots of pictures in here that I'm very excited to get into. Next up, we have a book that is not horror, but I think it would fit into a lot of prompts really, really well. And this one is just in case I get burnt out of all of the rest of the horror on my TBR, but that would be The Helm of Midnight by Marina Lostetter. And this is a fantasy, but it's a dark horror fantasy, and it follows a group of individuals who have to track down a serial killer that's risen from the dead. So to me, that sounds very spooky. Again, it's fantasy, not horror, but I've heard there are lots of horror elements in this fantasy. It's a darker fantasy, so yeah, I'd be interested in checking this out. It is on the bigger end, which is not ideal for readathons, but this is just in case I get burnt out because the rest of my TBR is horror. So in case I want to switch it up, I definitely have this on deck, which still feels in theme for the Summerween readathon. And then the rest of my TBR is all new release horror that came out this month. So first of all, we have What Moves the Dead by Kingfisher. This is very short, perfect for a readathon. This is a reimagining of Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher, so intrigued by that. I'm slightly familiar with the source material. I wanted to pick this up because I have enjoyed horror by Kingfisher before, and I just think she does retellings really, really well. So I feel like an Edgar Allan Poe reimagining would be delightfully creepy, perfect for Summerween. Next up on my TBR, we have Mary by Nat Cassidy. This one I'm very excited about because it says it's a mix of Midsummer, American Psycho, and Dolores Claiborne by Stephen King, and I really enjoy all three of those comp titles. I don't know if you can tell, I'm wearing a Midsummer t-shirt right now. Thought it was very perfect for Summerween. It's also just like the perfect floppy paperback, so I'm very excited to read this one. Again, those are all great, but very, very different comp titles, so I'm very intrigued to see what is going to go on in this one, and what kind of the vibe of this one is. And I believe, just briefly from the synopsis that I've seen, this is about a middle-aged woman who starts embodying a serial killer, or starts thinking that she is becoming possessed by a serial killer, so intriguing. And then last but not least is the book that I started yesterday. It's going to be the first book that I finish for this readathon, and that is going to be The Pallbearers Club by Tremblay. This one, I had no idea really what I was getting into when I picked this one up. I'm almost halfway through it, and it's very strange and very bizarre in a really good way. From the synopsis, I had no idea really what like the paranormal aspects or the horror aspects were going to be, and I was very pleasantly surprised. So I don't know if I want to give that away, but I struggle with that because I think the surprise of it all, I think I would have been so much more excited to pick it up had I known, but I digress. I really enjoy Tremblay as an author. This is a horror about a young misfit. It starts in the 1980s, and it follows this very, very awkward boy who creates the Pallbearers Club to look good on his applications because he has the grades, but because he's a bit of a misfit, he doesn't have like any extracurriculars to put on his college resume. So he creates the Pallbearers Club, which is a club that volunteers at funerals for people who don't have anyone else to be pallbearers for their coffins because for one reason or another their funerals aren't very attended. So he starts this club. He meets a very strange and intriguing girl at this club, and they start like a very weird friendship. The girl is weird. He's kind of weird too, though, if we're being honest, and their friendship goes from quirky to weird to darker. But the big thing about this book that I think is really going to make it or break it for people is that it is told in a very meta way. So this is being written by our main character, Art Barbara. He's writing it as a memoir, and you pick this up, you the reader, you've stumbled across this manuscript for his memoir. However, you're not the only one who stumbled across it. Also, his strange friend Mercy has also found Art's memoir. So as you're going through this one, you're reading not only Art's recounting of the events that happened and this friendship, but you're also reading corrections from Mercy as she's saying, this isn't what happened, this is actually what happened, why are you writing it this way? It's written in a very chaotic way because you have this false memoir style going, and then you have the red pen corrections from his friend. So you have two unreliable narrators kind of going back and forth, which I think is really entertaining to read. So here's kind of an example of what I'm talking about. In the page you have Art narrating, and then you'll have like red pen corrections from Mercy. But it's a really fun horror comedy. Maybe it's supernatural, maybe it's not. We have two unreliable narrators, each saying very different things. So I should finish this one today. I've been reading it very quickly and I'm just really enjoying it. One thing that I appreciate about Tremblay as a writer is that even though I think all that I've read from him has been horror, they've been very different. You always feel like you're getting a new project from him, which I really enjoy. And the tone of the horror too. I think you have some books that are taken very, very seriously. They're very serious horror, and there's not like a lot of levity in them, or there are ones that are more on the meta side and have like a lot of references and are fun and feel kind of like a B horror movie, where you're scared but you can still enjoy yourself. And then there are ones that are like kind of more sci-fi. I just feel like every single time I pick up a horror novel from him, I don't know what to expect, but I always always have like such a pleasant time reading it. I'd say just in terms with how this is formatted and some of the things, I feel like Art is kind of like a semi-autobiographical character of the author. I'm not saying that they're the same person, but definitely some similarities between the characters if you've like ever listened to an interview with Paul Tremblay about his life. So I think that's very interesting. I think this is the most ambitiously like written and crafted with that sort of memoir, also like note-taking sort of style. So I'm really enjoying this one. I'm really looking forward to all the books that I have picked out for Summerween. I live in Arkansas and it has been like 100 degrees for the past 2 weeks every single day. So I'm done. I'm done with summer. I've never been a summer person, definitely not a summer in the South kind of person. So I'm ready for fall. I'm very excited for this readathon. I did go to Bath & Body Works and pick up some candles because they were on the same page as me and also released some fall. So I got a sweet cinnamon pumpkin, and then I also got my favorite candle of all times, which is leaves. So we'll be burning these as well, staying indoors all weekend long, staying cool. But that is going to be it for this introductory clip. Again, I don't know if this is going to be like the whole readathon in one vlog or if I'll have to split it up at all, but I'm just so excited to dive into these books. Very excited for Summerween. It's like my favorite readathon of the year. So yeah, but that's all I really have for this update. Hopefully I'll be able to finish the Pallbearers Club today, and I will check back in with another update later. Happy Sunday, friends. I just finished my first book of the readathon, and that is the Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. I'm counting this one as the prompt book with Halloween colors. On the cover, we've got like some orangey red, some green, some black, and then on the inside is purple. So all of those are very Halloween-y colors, but I did enjoy this one. I really, really love books that are told in like unique ways. I like books within books. I like just unique storytelling. So I really enjoyed that format in here of like a memoir with notes from someone else with two unreliable narrators for very different reasons too, why they might be unreliable. So I really enjoyed this, as with all Paul Tremblay's. If you don't like ambiguous endings, probably like not a book for you. I feel like all of his books definitely have endings that are not necessarily so open-ended. I feel like there's normally one or two options that they could have gone, but they're just open-ended enough where you can kind of decide maybe where it goes or figure out kind of which way it goes for this one. And then a couple other of his books, definitely it was more of a is this supernatural, is this not? Definitely in a way where you could make strong arguments for either of them. Both would make sense. But if you don't like ambiguity, probably not the horror author for you, just because he does have those open-ended endings. I personally think they're done really well, but I know some people that's really like a make or break thing for them. So just a heads up for that. I did enjoy this one. I would say if you're new to Paul Tremblay, I would highly recommend starting at A Head Full of Ghosts and then going on in publication order from there, just because there are so many Easter eggs that I do really think, especially in Survivor Song, not as much in this one, but especially in Survivor Song, I feel feel like if you read the books in order that they were published, you're going to pick up on Easter eggs and different like connections to the different books that'll make it a more of an enjoyable reading experience. So that's like an extra added layer of meta to an already very kind of meta book. Much like Stephen King, you know, all of his books take place in a Stephen King universe. All of Paul Tremblay's books very much take place in the same universe with references to events that have happened in other books. So I definitely would recommend starting at A Head Full of Ghosts and just going on from there. So I'm very happy to announce my first read of this readathon was a success. I had a lot of fun. Definitely one that I don't think was too creepy. It had some horror elements and then also some very humorous elements, especially the way it was told, that I really enjoyed. So first book down, and then I did end up picking up another book that I'm definitely going to finish today, I feel, just because it is the shortest book on my TBR, and that would be What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This is a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, and it's only, I think, about 120 pages, maybe 150, and I'm on page 41. We follow our main character, Alex Easton, as they travel to their childhood best friend's ancestral family home because the best friend is feeling that she's about to die soon. She's very sick, Madeline Usher, and she's very sick with a very mysterious illness, and she just feels like she's going to die soon. So as a friend, Alex goes to this family home, the House of Usher, and just weird things start happening. So I feel like that's really all I'm going to kind of give about the synopsis, just because with it being retelling, also being very short, I don't want to give too much away, but this one definitely feels like a fairy tale retelling. I don't know what prompt this is going for. It probably honestly won't go for a prompt at all, other than just like a general spooky vibe, because I'm reading it. I started reading it during daytime, and to my knowledge, The Fall of the House of Usher is not a slasher, and it doesn't have haunt in the title, but I was so excited to pick it up, and it's short enough that I went ahead and added it. So hopefully we'll be finishing this by the end of the day. In unrelated book news, today's a very chill Sunday. I'm trying to get up the motivation to go to my apartment complex has a gym, and it's only about like a 3-minute walk, if that, probably more like 2 minutes, but it is so hot outside. It's like 95 to 100 degrees. It's been that every single day. The walk is not long, but going there in like 100-degree heat, not fun. Once I get there, I'm totally fine. The gym is air conditioned, it's nice, and I enjoy working out. Just that little 2-minute, 3-minute walk is just really what is kind of making me drag my heels about it. So I don't have any audiobooks or anything at the moment, but honestly, I think when I'm on the treadmill, I'll just try and catch up with some summerween reading vlogs that have already come out. So yes, maybe that'll be like motivation for me to go again. I like working out. I'm just really not a warm weather person. So yeah, going outside in this kind of heat is going to be crazy. I was looking at the forecast for this week, and we have several days that it's going to be like 101, 102, 104 degrees as a high, which is disgusting. So yeah, leaving the air conditioning even when it's only for less than 5 minutes does not sound too appealing to me. But that's my reading update. Hopefully by the end of this weekend I'll have finished yet another book, and I will check back in with the vlog a little bit later. Good morning, happy Monday. I got a much better start to my morning than I initially anticipated, because it is 9 a.m. right now and normally I would be at work. However, the power went out apparently at the building that I work at yesterday night, and they still really hadn't gotten it back running, and especially because it's like 100 degrees, they hadn't gotten the AC running today. So all the employees were kind of told to just hang tight, hang at home, see if maybe it was going to be like a work from home situation or just waiting until it got fixed, depending on how long the fix was. They did manage to fix the AC, so right now I'm just kind of waiting. We're all told to wait and come in at 11, just so that our building would really get a chance to have the AC circulating for a couple of hours before people had to come in and work. So yeah, definitely not the Monday morning I thought I was going to have. I was really hoping for a minute there that we would have like a day off or just like a work from home day. That would have been really nice, but again, I'm not complaining at the coming in late either. It was definitely one of those Monday mornings where it was very hard to wake up, so it was really nice to wake up and realize that I had more time for more of a slower morning. And because of that slower morning, I did finish my second book of the readathon, which is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This is definitely not my favorite T. Kingfisher book that I've ever read. I would say now that I've read, I think I've read about 4 things from this author before. 2 of them were more of like the fantasy or the romance kind of retellings, like fairy tale retellings, and then 2 were more just traditional horror. I would say this one, even though it is based on Edgar Allan Poe, it is a retelling. It definitely feels in writing style and tone more like the retellings. So I think if you, like me, have read different things, a lot of different things from T. Kingfisher, it definitely feels more like The Raven and the Reindeer, the way that was written, the very lyrical and fairy tale-esque way, that definitely feels like this. It definitely feels like a retelling. It's a very like short gothic story. I thought it was written very well. I wish I had more time with it. I tend to prefer larger books over shorter books. This was a really good book to read for a readathon. It was only about like 140, 150 pages, and it's like a short, small little book. So really, if it would have been like a full-sized book, I don't think it would have been 150 pages, obviously, but for the source material, I think it did a good job of retelling it, kind of adding in some more aspects and some different elements. Our main character is non-binary, and we also get a cameo from a fictional aunt. I believe she's the aunt of Beatrix Potter. So different things like that were cool and added different little layers to the story that made this feel like a gothic fairy tale. And I really did enjoy the author's note in the back. So while I definitely, overall, I think I enjoyed the Pallbearers Club more and the reading experience of the Pallbearers Club more, I did enjoy reading this. I thought it was a really strong retelling. So if you like Edgar Allan Poe, I would highly recommend picking this up. As for what I plan to pick up next, I think I am going to be going with Mary by Nat Cassidy. I'm so excited to pick this up. This actually comes out tomorrow. I've been really looking forward to this one. It's just been calling me. I've wanted to pick it up for a while now, so I definitely think this is going to be the next book that I start for the readathon. But that is going to be this update, just a very short little update for you, because I had time before work and I wasn't anticipating having time before work to update, but now I have to go get ready because unfortunately I don't have the day off. But I will take a delayed opening because, hey, a delayed opening is definitely better than a full day at work. So yeah, I'm definitely hoping that it's a day where they just have you add the hours like you started work at your normal time instead of making you stay late, because I really don't want to be working until like 7 p.m. tonight. So hopefully I just get to leave at a normal time. But yeah, that's going to be the update for this morning, and I will talk to you all later. Hi, happy Wednesday. Ignore my red face. It's over 100 degrees outside, so that's just going to be the way that it is. I feel like I was a lot more optimistic on Monday when I did my last talking update than I am today, because I went into work and they had fixed the AC, but it still just like was not. I mean, I know it was running we could hear it running, but just because the power had been out for like an entire night, it was very hot. I was literally sitting in my office sweating. Like, it felt like after you work out and you're like sitting down after a workout and you still feel like just sweat everywhere, and that is how Monday felt. So yeah, Monday I just boiled all day, and I didn't get much reading in at all because I pretty much came home and watched a movie and just tried to cool down. Tuesday I did get some more reading in. I'm hoping to get a lot of reading in today because today is the second to last day of the readathon. So I did start Mary by Nat Cassidy. This is the one that I said I wanted to start next. I'm about 100 pages into this one and I'm really loving it. First of all paperbacks need to be this delightfully floppy and this delightfully big. I'm a hardcover person over a paperback person because of that. I like the size of a hardcover and I like the way that it opens in a hardcover. So more paperbacks like this, please, I'm begging. It has nothing to do with the story at all, but it's such a nice reading experience for that alone. I am really enjoying this. This is going to work for the prom to read a slasher, I'm pretty sure. So first of all, this has a very lovely and touching foreword for a number of reasons, or rather an author's note, where the author Nat Cassidy talks about kind of his reasonings for writing this book, and it's dedicated to his mom, who's unfortunately passed away, but kind of explaining like the connection he and his mom had with horror. In particular, Stephen King's Carrie was like the first horror movie that he really had like a conversation with his mom and got into horror, and talking about how Carrie White as a character is kind of a victim in her own story and not necessarily like the monster of the story. So the author's note, very sweet, kind of talking about thematically what inspired him to write this book, which is always nice. I do really enjoy that at the beginning of a book, kind of knowing what I'm getting into. Also, it had trigger warnings, which I feel is very important. I read a lot of horror. I am no stranger to dark subject matter, but there are some things that I really do appreciate having a warning before going into the book. I don't think there aren't really too many triggers for me personally where they're deal breakers where I can't read them. I can only think of really one off the top of my head, but there are some topics where I can read them, but I need to be in the right place to read them. So having that was so nice. I really advocate, I really hope that this is kind of like the industry standard moving forward. I feel like we're seeing that more and more within the publishing industry, which is great. Now, right on the back, this compares this book to Midsummer, American Psycho, and Dolores Claiborne. The author himself talks obviously about thematically just Carrie as a work of art, kind of inspiring, not necessarily exactly this book, but just his love of the genre. And I really do feel if you like Stephen King's writing, you're gonna love this. It has the same slice of life horror elements that I think Stephen King does really well, like the kind of finding horror and beauty in the mundane. I really am enjoying that so far, and just like the eerie foreshadowing. So this book is about a middle-aged woman named Mary, and she has done her best her whole entire life to kind of blend into the background. She's quieter, she's lived like a very unremarkable life, and she pretty much prefers it that way. However, she has noticed lately that she started having some symptoms that are very concerning for her. She feels like she's losing stretches of time. She has really bizarre nightmares and she is seeing things. However, doctors keep telling her because of her age, it's most likely just the onset of menopause. Even though she feels like there's something more sinister going on, she is out of the blue, while she's dealing with these symptoms, she's called back to her hometown. She does not have a great fond memories there, to care for an elderly relative. And when she goes to care for the relative, these symptoms start getting more and more bizarre. The nightmares start getting more intense, and the things that she starts seeing and hearing get more intense and spooky as well. Again, I'm on page 90 so of about 400. I'm really enjoying this, and I'm really glad that I'm getting the chance to read it so close to its publication date. It did come out on Tuesday, so I'm really enjoying this. It is a very perfect summerween read. And then the next book, actually, good news. This was like one of the good things that came out of me going to work on Monday and just sweating the whole time. But one of my holds finally came in for one of the books that have haunting in the title. So even though I only have the rest of today and tomorrow, I am going to try and read both of these. Normally, I feel like in terms of the readathon, I would pick up this one first, just because it does have haunting in the title and it is shorter. However, I am enjoying Mary too much to put it down. So we're gonna try and read both of them. But this is The Haunting of Rookwood House by Darcy Coates. This author has a lot of books with haunt in the title. Just looking at this author's other work, it looks like about half of her books have the haunting of something house in them. So I'm assuming this is going to be a ghost story, and I hope that it's going to be like an actual ghost story. I'm pretty sure this author does do like very traditional haunted house stories in the sense of it is actually ghosts and not just a non-paranormal explanation, which I'm in the mood for. So we've got the paranormal, we have a slasher that also kind of paranormal. They're both on the bigger end of books for a readathon, but I think I can do it, especially if I end up really loving both of these. I'll definitely be able to read that much in these next couple of days. I feel like I'm just going to absolutely fly through Mary. I've been thinking about it all day. Been really looking forward to coming home so I can keep reading this one. And then I've heard great things about this author as well. So I'm gonna go get to reading, hopefully make a big dent in Mary, and I will talk to y'all with another update later. So it is officially the end of the Summerween readathon, and I did get a lot of good books in, did a lot of reading. I really enjoyed what I read. I did not finish all the prompts, and that's okay. The biggest one that I did not complete was read a book with haunt in the title. I know I ended up getting that Darcy Coates book, but it wasn't what I was in the mood for. I tried to read like the first page, and it's not a bad book, I just wasn't in the mood for it. So I did not do that challenge, but that is okay. For Read a Book in the Dark, I also didn't finish the book that I ended up primarily reading during the night. Most of my books I did end up reading like after work, like at the very tail end of the day, but the one that I know that I didn't read at all during the daytime was The Apparitionists. This was my nonfiction, probably not the best pick for a readathon because this is like very historically dense, and it does in the beginning, even though this is about like spirit photography and ghosts and the spiritualist movement, it does start with like the history of photography, because the concept of just regular people and photographs was still a very new concept, as was just photography itself. So it does start with that. So if you do pick this up, I'm really loving it because I'm a big history nerd. I'm a big paranormal history nerd, so I'm really loving this. It does kind of read like a history book though, so that's not an issue for me. If it is for you, just keep that in mind. But the photography that's in here is very creepy, and I am really enjoying this. I will be continuing on reading this, just it's gonna be a slower read because it is very factually dense, and it reads like a history textbook or a history book as opposed to like a very conversational nonfiction. I did finish my book Read a Slasher though, and it ended up being my favorite book of the whole readathon. So that would be Mary, An Awakening of Terror by Nat Cassidy. I absolutely loved this one. I've talked about it at length. I read the physical copy. I know sometimes audiobooks can take out author introductions or author like the afterwards, things like that. I would recommend picking this up physically just to make sure that you read those, because there's an author's note at the beginning, there's an author's note at the end, as well as like traditional acknowledgements that I think really add a lot of context to this book. And I really loved what this book was trying to say. I especially loved at the end when the author was talking about how horror is such a incredible genre. I absolutely love it. And he was talking about how horror is like such a vehicle for, you know, not just entertainment, but for people to kind of talk about societal issues and societal like real world fears through the lens of fiction. I think horror just does that absolutely wonderfully, and I do think those discussions by the author add a lot to this. But yeah, I did really love this. Definitely like a slower paced slasher. I feel like not in a bad way. I definitely think if you like Stephen King pacing, or if you like Stephen King's writing, I definitely think you'll like this author. I really enjoyed this one. It was just such a perfect blend of like paranormal and slasher horror, and definitely there are trigger warnings listed by the author at the beginning of the book, but just to know, this does get like very bloody, very gory. So just keep that in mind. I would say this is definitely probably like the most graphic book that I read during this readathon. This was the scariest book that I read for this readathon, probably than the Pallbearers Club and What Moves the Dead, although both of those didn't really give me like a scare factor in terms of horror. They're definitely more of like, one was more gothic, one was kind of horror comedy, almost horror satire a little bit. So this one definitely very creepy. Highly recommend for the upcoming spooky season. I really enjoyed this. And last but not least, I'm just including this because it was on my initial TBR, and this was the book that I ended up picking up when I was going to pick up The Haunting of Rookwood House, and it just wasn't working for me, and that would actually be The Helm of Midnight by Marina Lostetter. This is the first book in a fantasy trilogy, and we are following a group of characters as they have to try and hunt down a serial killer who has risen from the dead. I read around 80 pages of this, and I am so excited to keep reading this. So I know I didn't finish it, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about it, because I did end up reading this a lot towards the end of the readathon. This is absolutely, I think, like the magic system, the soft magic system, because I don't know if there's any other magic in this fantasy world, but essentially if you are rich enough or powerful enough, have enough means and like a skill that's deemed worthy of holding on to after you die, everyone in the society gets a death mask, and the people with marketable skills that they want to pass down, get put into these masks, so then people can later pick up the mask. Like if someone was a really good doctor and was just an excellent mind in that field, they would put their knowledge into their death mask when they die. So someone could pick up their mask and like wear the mask and channel their spirit to heal, and not everyone can really wield these masks because it is like a fragment of a different person's soul. So essentially we have at the beginning of this book the most infamous serial killer this world has ever seen. This serial killer had a death mask, and it goes missing, and it is a very powerful mask indeed. So a group of people have to band together to try and find it before someone puts on the mask and then obtains all of these horrible powers. So yes, even though this is fantasy, it definitely has darker elements, gorier elements, and I am really enjoying this one. I'm really excited to keep reading this, because I will keep reading this after the readathon has ended. I think the magic system and just the system of like the death masks, and then some other things that are kind of hinted at in the society but I haven't gotten to because I'm only on page 80, I think are going to be very interesting, and I'm very intrigued to see how this very dark, kind of very like horror-esque sort of fantasy is going to go. But there you have it. Those are all the books that I managed to read during the Summerween readathon. I had a lot of fun, really enjoyed both doing this vlog and reading lots of good spooky books. Cannot wait to start spooky season. Less than 100 days now until Halloween, but that is going to be it for this video. If you liked it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye!